Let us pray. Father, thank you. Thank you for your word and the opportunity to hear it from you, Lord. I thank you for the word that you are going to plant in our hearts this morning, Lord. And I ask that it give the fruit to the 100% and it be successful in our lives, Lord. I ask that you open our ears and our spirit. Today's message centers in a time when David became the king of Israel and the changes and celebrations that followed his kingship. But before we enter in the majestic details of how David became king of Israel, one of the most successful kingship in all of Israel's story, you know me, I like to go back first so we can understand how we're going forward. So to put things in perspective, I want to take time to discover a little bit of the messy part that we often leave out of how King David went from a humble shepherd to king of all of Israel. You see, his ascension to one of the most successful kings was not an easy ride, much less an overnight type of success. It took David a lot of time, effort, disappointments, suffering, losses, and faith, unfaithfulness. Most people like to concentrate on the success of King David and kind of like forget about the details of all that he had to go before he even became king. And one of the most defining moments that we all probably heard growing up as kids was when he was just 16 years old. It's when he fought and defeated the giant Goliath. Following his victory, David was the hero of Israel. But this success came with a price, you see, because there was a king before him. King Saul, is that right? Saul? In Spanish, Saul, okay? Saul. Much better. So, King Saul was kind of, jealous. Because all of a sudden David was successful and he was building followers and admirers and, it wasn't our times we would walk here like everybody gonna want to autograph and take a picture with him, post it on Facebook, that type of thing. So, if I'm King Saul, I'm like, hey, I'm here too, guys, anybody wants to take a picture with me? And they're like, no, David is here, get out of the way. So, he was kind of feeling left out. So, he didn't want to look like a bad guy and just disappear, David, So he said, I have a plan. So he sent out David, since he's such a great warrior, he sent him to all the most dangerous missions he could find. In the hopes, that he won't come back. But indeed, he came back, and he returned victorious from every single battle. And the love and admiration from his people just grew a little bit more after his mission. And this kind of like boiled the king's blood and said, So he said, I know. I'm just going to have him killed. Just get rid of him. But he was well loved by everyone. And of course, he shared the plan with his soldiers. It's like, get him killed. So they warned him, and he had the opportunity to escape. So now he goes to live on exile for many years. And after the death of King Saul in a battle, King Saul's son now races to be king. However, at the same time, King David, or at this time David, was made king over one of the tribes of Israel. And this caused a divide. Right? Those who were following the son of the king and those following David, which eventually took them both into a civil war. You thought U.S. was the only one with that? No. So then, in the middle of the war, David's throne was become successful. He was able to unite both sides, and he became king over all of Israel, right, after the civil war was over. And this is right here. Right here is where we're supposed to start our story today. And as we can see, it was not all fun and games for poor David to this point. He went from shepherd to war hero to fugitive to community organizer. Want to call it like that? Seems like a cool title. To king, right? But David had a lot of work up ahead of him becoming the king of Israel, since Israel was a bit lost during the reign of King Saul. Because during the reign of Saul, the king had put God kind of like on the sidelines of his kingdom, both figuratively and literally. Oh, I said that. That is why the nation grew apart from God, and their heart was not anymore close to God as they were. You see, since the beginning, when God called Israel as a nation and took them out of captivity, remember Egypt? Moses, the guy that spoke Latin? God was at the center of the nation of Israel. So much that God had given instructions to Moses to build an ark where God could live around his people. Mainly because back then, the separation that existed between God and humanity, and we were unable to receive God in our heart. Which we all know that this divide no longer exists, and thanks to Christ dying for us. But even then, when God wanted to be feeling close to his people, and he wanted his people to feel him close to them, he got this little ark, or big ark, should I say, constructed for him to reside. And this box was the center of the presence of God. And it was supposed to be the center of the life of Israel. Well, from the time it was constructed until Saul, it was the center of the life of Israel. But then, Saul thought, I know better, and he decided not to make the life of Israel surround around it anymore. And you know the saying, out of sight? Okay, you're awake, good. With time, the people of Israel, starting with King Saul, they grew apart from God. And by the time David became the king, the people of Israel were far, far from living a godly life. So David made it a point. As soon as he became king of all of Israel, to bring God's presence near his people and Israel. So the king's first mission was to recuperate the ark, make a place for it in Jerusalem, and put it at the center of the city and the life of Israel, where it should have been from the beginning, right? And now, David and the people of Israel will have a constant reminder of the need to seek God in their lives. So let's take a minute and put this in perspective. Don't you think that David's story up to this point sounds like a bit of a mess? I mean, he was a shepherd, and he was called to be anointed as a king when he was still working as a shepherd for his father. He was a young kid. And he went into this messy middle. And I can certainly imagine David a little confused on it all. I mean, like, but Lord, I thought I was supposed to be king, and you're telling me I have to go and kill Goliath. Okay, I'll go. So he was victorious. But Lord, why do I have to run away from King Saul? I'm supposed to be the king, not him. Okay, I'll stay on exile for a little bit. Why do I have to go fight my own people to bring peace? I mean, why? It was a long journey for David, a process where God used it to mold David's heart, to bring it back to the light, to bring back the light that was missing in Israel. And this is what I call the messy middle. Does that sound familiar? Do you all have messy middles? But one of the things that I can see is that in the middle of all his messy life up to this point, even before he was called to kill Goliath, after he became a hero in his town, and when his life was threatened by King Saul, he was always keeping his eyes on God and the calling to be king that was given to him from a very young age. Unlike Saul, you see, King Saul was also called by the Lord to be king, anointed, chosen. But to this point, well, like, David, he kind of turned his eyes away from God. And this is what has made all the difference for David. And in the middle of the mess that he found himself in, David was able to keep God on it. It's much like us. I mean, we are sometimes too concerned on how we are dealing with our mess in the things and circumstances and life events that will eventually somehow take us to where we are going. We question ourselves and even get mad at ourselves for the storms that we're going through. We get mad at God, and we unknowingly just forget that is that messy middle, that same thing that we might be complaining about, that is the route that He has planned for us all the way through. And as long as we do as David and keep God in that messy middle, we will see it through, just like David. You see, David realized that after all the hardships he endured and all the trouble he faced, God was faithful to him. And God delivered in His promise. He became king. So David delivered in his part of the deal. And he brought God's presence to his life and the life of his people. And as the Bible tells us, King David was so joyful when he was able to achieve this part that he was singing and dancing, because he knew that the only reason he made it to that messy middle is because God was with him. So my message for myself and for you guys this morning is, put God in the middle of the mess. Whatever it is that is going through your life, make sure that no matter how messy your life looks, that He is there. Because you might not be able to make sense of it all, but He has a plan. We might not know which way we're going to turn in the middle of the flood. Do I go left or do I right? Which one looks less flooded? That's the one I'm going to go. But He is there. He is with us. And that is why I tell you today, rejoice and dance and sing and play the piano and come to church, even though when your life just makes sense and the circumstances are not working just the way you thought they would. It might look like a mess, but He is untangling it. And that is my message for you today. Amen.